I feel like he is going to have Jack X or Pocket Sixes a lot, but I also think that there are times when he'll have like ace something, just any ace that he floated the flop with that he would be betting. And I felt like he would have air or a worse hand enough of the time for me to call his just less than half pot bet. If he would have bet like 7, I probably would have folded. But given that he bet around half pot, I decided to call, and he did show us Jack X. But I feel like he's definitely going to have air the required 25% of the time, or 30% of the time, or whatever it works out to be. So I think that's a reasonably good call, but it happens. We run into bigger hands all the time, so I'm not too concerned about my call. I think it's fine. But again, if he would have bet a little bit more, I would have just folded. And so we open fours under the gun. I think we just get folds. I'm not sure. Yeah, we do. And this is starting to wrap up. Like, we have maybe 5 or 6 more minutes of footage. I'm not sure if we get into too many other big hands. I think this ace king hand might be big, but I'm not certain. And so Tom's still continuing to call or to show his hands every time he makes a hand, basically. And it's awesome to see all the free information that he's giving us. I make it 6x, and I think that was a mistake. I probably could have gotten by with making it 250. But in any case, they both fold. With the Jack 7, I was considering 3-betting, but we are getting kind of deep with Tom, and also Space Monkey's pretty deep as well, so I felt like he was going to be more inclined to call. And at the same time, we have King Queen in the small blind, and I would generally 3-bet this because I felt like Baby Ryan was going to call a little bit lighter since he was in position. So I thought we would have him dominated a decent amount of the time. But I decided to flat because I wanted to get into post-flop spots because pre-flop poker is no fun to watch. And so I flat, and we flop top pair. And I considered leading because he would have a hand like, or he could have a lot of like 9x and Jack X that probably won't bet this flop. But I decided just to check call. And he checks behind. So I lead and he folds, and it's a pretty boring hand. But I like flatting there every now and then, just because like he's going to have lower flush draws. Like he's not going to call a 3-bet with like 7-5 of hearts, but if we were to flop a draw, we obviously have him dominated. Same thing with like Queen 9, King 9, just hands like that. So while I generally would 3-bet him because we do have a history of 3-betting him a lot, and he's probably going to open up his calling range, I just decided to flat because we are wanting to get into some fun post-flop spots, but he doesn't oblige and we take it down. And we flop top pair with the Jack 7. Again, I didn't 3-bet because we were getting pretty deep, and I felt like Space Monkey would be more inclined to call and try and like set mine, or try and hit with his like 7-8 suited or something like that. And we don't want to get into too crazy of a pot with Jack 7 because it's Jack 7. So I decided to flat and bring Tom along because he's a pretty weak player. But again, Space Monkey bets into 3 other people, and I'm pretty sure he has a hand like maybe Ace of Diamonds X, or he has a better jack than us. I felt like this is a spot where I could call, but with 2 people left to act, my position is pretty bad. so I just decided to fold. And Tom comes along, pretty much like we expected him to. And I flat the 4-5 on the right table, just trying to play pots. And so Tom leads for 4 into 14, and the board runs out pretty safely. And Space Monkey folds, and Tom shows his trip nines. And while that's going on, we bet the flop when Mark Mind checks to us, and we get a fold. And I was really concerned, or not concerned, but like wondering why it didn't show Space Monkey's hand in the replayer, but I didn't see that he folded, and I just automatically assumed that he called. But maybe our read was a little bit wrong, but I do think that he just had like an ace of diamonds X hand, and I don't think that he was just betting with complete air, so I'm pretty okay with my fold. And so we open twos, get 2 callers, and the flop comes out pretty badly. And TJ Plus thinks about it and leads for $1. And he did it before with our king queen hand on king jack 10, and he folded to a raise. So I was pretty sure he had air here, but at the same time I didn't want to call because even his air hands with overcards have a bunch of equity against us, and plus I still have I win a max behind us. If it was heads up, I would consider calling and seeing what he does on the turn, but given that there was still a person left to act, I just decided to fold. But I feel like it was a pretty okay spot to raise, given that he had bet and folded before to our raise. And you see he bets $1 again. Like, I still just don't think he has anything ever. But again, we would have been counterfeited, so it's no big deal. And he bets $1 again, and he ends up having ace-9 for a turn flush draw and rivered pair. And that, definitely was what I thought he had. And I think I win a max ended up having like ace-3 of diamonds for a flop flush draw, so he wasn't folding if we raised, most likely. But in any case, I felt like it was a pretty good spot to raise if it was heads up, but since it was 3-handed, I felt like it was an okay spot to fold. And since we were on our last hand with the 7-8 suited, I had decided to open it. It's a little loose with 2 shorter stacks and them playing a lot of hands, but I decided to open it, and we get a pretty horrible board. And Mark Mine leads, so we just go ahead and fold. And it runs out, so we run a runner 2 pair, but it's whatever, and we fold. And so TJ Plus checks or calls the flop, and he bets 2 into 9, and I just have no idea what to think of his range right now. And Mark Mind, I believe, check calls again. I forget because I was wrapping this up, and I must have ended it a little early. But in any case, Mark Mind ended up having like ace X with a diamond, and TJ Plus had a small flush and like just called a river bet or something like that. So I'm going to pause the video now and bring up my Hold'em manager for the session, and we'll go over some stats and some of the bigger hands. Okay, so we're